Okay,
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order for Thursday, September 8th. Need a roll call
Dick Pufall,
here.
Mike Berlin, Clarence Campbell,
Mr. Campbell has to be excused.
thank you. Bill Metzinger,
Here.
Marty Vitek,
Here. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
Mike Berlin moves to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Seconded by Bill Metzinger.
Seconded by Bill Metzinger. All in favor, say aye.
All right,
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public comments. Do we have any public want to speak? Nobody? Last call. Nobody here. Okay, we'll move right along to approval of the executive committee meeting minutes from June 14th. I'll need a motion.
Also.
Motion by Marty Vitek to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Berlin.
Seconded by Mike Berlin. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 5, update and discussion and action, Carlson Detman wage study. Dan, the ball's in your court.
Okay, we have Heather Murray here today from Carlson Detman, who will be giving the executive committee an update. So Heather, you're up.
All right, good morning. I have Patrick Glynn here with me as well. Let's see. Dan, am I able to share my screen? If not, I can just talk through kind of where
No,
things.
I'll make you co-host.
Okay.
Okay, you should be good.
All right. Got it. Okay. Can you see the slide that says classification and compensation project update?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So thank you for having us this morning. As I indicated, I have Patrick Glynn here. He has a few things that he's going to give us some history on as well. But today, in meeting with Dan, we agreed it's a good point for us to meet and talk through the project history, where we're at, and then on a go forward basis, what direction the committee is seeking. So just a little bit of history on the project, and I'll go through this quickly, but we had our initial meetings. We've gone through the job documentation throughout the process, and then based on that job documentation, as well as meetings with Dan and Heather, we have conducted our job evaluation and analysis. We're working to finalize that information so that we can begin the next phase, which is really pulling together the plan, but we do need some policy decisions there. So we've been in the process, as all of that has been going on, in collecting market data, doing some data analysis, doing some cleanup based on comparables. So at this point, we're at the update and guidance phase, which is a great phase to be at. We are going to be looking for your input on how to proceed from here. And then we will be able to do the final report, and I'll touch a little bit on appeals and what that would look like. So essentially there's 4 policy questions that we would need to go through today. We need to define those comparisons, which we've done. We determine the market placement that you're interested in being at, and I have some background information there and some discussion that we can have on that. talking through design structure, and then developing an implementation plan. Yeah, I can get this to advance. It's not cooperating because that's why would we want that to happen? Next. There we go. So market placement is our first question, and that is, where do you as the employer want to be relative to the labor market that you're working in? As we know, the labor market it's a tough market right now, finding people, getting people to stay. We're in a challenging environment right now. So do you want to be high? How competitive do you want to be? Do you want to be low, or do you want to be average, which would be in the 50th percentile? Will that 50th percentile place you in a competitive position and the position that you desire to be in as an employer? What does that mean? You can choose any of these percentiles, really. You can choose to have 10% of the organizations in your comparable pool paying less, but that leaves 90% of the organizations paying more, increasing some of the challenges with regard to recruitment. So the 50th percentile is often where we see employers seeking to be, meaning you're right in the middle. 50% are paying less, 50% are paying more, and you're right in the middle. Some choose to take a more competitive and a more aggressive approach in that they want to fall within that 90th percentile, in that there are very few organizations paying more. We're seeing 10%. We don't see that as often, especially in the public sector, but it is an option. So that is the first item that we can circle back to and have some discussion about. But then that moves us into the pay structure and the administration of that structure. So there are different structures that can be considered. We definitely have a recommendation on a structure for you, but do feel like it's important that we go through each of the structures so that you have that information to be able to provide us guidance on which direction you'd like us to go from here. A lot of variables need to be considered as we talk through this. Employee movement in the structure. So as I understand it right now, there isn't a defined structure in place. And so how employees move within the compensation within your organization is not clearly defined. There is the internal hierarchy, the job evaluation ratings. That's the piece that we've been working on. There's always compression concerns. So are there any compression concerns that we need to be looking at? How do we address those? The unique market pressures definitely drive into some of those factors as well. The number of desired structures. So we do see organizations that implement different structures depending on the different types of employment.
No, I'm sorry, she's out for the rest of the week.
So oftentimes, for example, if there's a nursing home, the nursing home might see a different structure than the rest of the organization. That's also an option. And then there is always the elephant in the room, the financial and budget pressures that we need to consider as we talk about implementation and developing these strategies. Connection to the performance of employees. Some employers choose to look at the performance of employees and tie some compensation to high performers, or try and reward those employees that really go above and beyond. And then there's the other elements of pay, working in the evenings, 24-hour shifts, maybe on-call pay, call-in pay, those kinds of things. And then from a recruitment and retention strategy, I touched on that a little bit. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and he's going to kind of get into some of those considerations with the different pay structures and some samples. You're muted.
I'm muted and I need to take control at some point here.
Oh, I can click through too.
Okay.
I don't know.
You know, as we talk about structures, I think all four of these are important to talk about, and we'll try to keep it as high level as we can this morning. But probably the least preferred of any one of these would be just having a single rate. Now, there are instances where you may indeed have that. It might be in some organizations, they choose to take the administrator off the schedule and negotiate that rate of pay separately. But we've seen other instances where every single job in an organization has a rate of pay and that's it. And that's an acceptable comp approach, except for it really puts a lot of pressure on you to be sensitive to the marketplace. If there's any fluctuation whatsoever, and you're not able to respond almost immediately from a wage standpoint, it's gonna be problematic. Where these others, when you're working with ranges of pay, it gives you some flexibility from a hiring standpoint, or moving people through based on performance or tenure with the organization, tenure in a job, you name it, that having the ability to pay a range of pay for those positions. And most organizations, especially in the public sector, this is the approach that they employ. For us, we tend to see performance-based models being prevalent in the private sector and step-based models prevalent in the public sector. In fact, there was an article, I think it was October of 2016, we wrote for the Municipality magazine, the League of Municipalities, talking about challenges of pay for performance in the public sector. And we'll talk about a few of those on some of the coming slides here. But with the step model, it tends to be a little bit more compact, in terms of, the 100% being the estimated market rate for that particular grade, that you might dip a little bit below 10 to 15% below that midpoint and 10 to 15% above. And it's incremental steps, which is where some of the challenges can come in, that people are expecting to move, whether it's every year or every other year, but there's movement of those steps as well as maintaining the structure. But that, I would have to argue that probably 90% plus of our public sector clients employ step models, because when you move to performance, what you are saying as an organization is performance is king or queen, that should rule the day in terms of how employees move through the structure. Now, you might look at it and say, acceptable performance, meeting expectations, means more at the bottom than at the top. You want your top, people moving towards the top of the structure to be top performers. But I think the two challenges that we see with this and in terms of doing this is, one, if an organization does not have a valid and consistent job evaluation process, or I should say performance evaluation process in place, that trying to shoehorn in a performance-based model without calibrating it, without trying to bring the consistency that's needed, that we see those systems fall flat on their face in many cases. I think the other thing is that when you say performance is at the top of the list and is a priority, and if it's not funded, then you send the exact opposite message to the employees, is that performance really isn't the priority that it was alluded to be. And then what you can see, that last one, as it, hybrid combination, whatever you want to call it, it is taking what I would call the best of both, that moving employees to that market rate from minimum to the control point, that's what CP stands for, that it gets them there in a regular, orderly fashion. So you are able to say to that employee that, yes, we're hiring you a little bit lower on the market, but we'll move you to a market competitive rate within 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever that metric might be. But if we're going to pay more than that estimated market rate, we're going to put all of our eggs in the performance basket. So it truly, as it implies, it's combining those two. And so when we talk about, the market rate, that I really prefer, as Heather was talking before about the percentiles and how structures are based, that it's really the market, the range for that job, because that control point sometimes might not exactly hit the market rate. And the reason for that, and I've been talking about this more and more lately, is that we could have 10 different surveys providing 10 different rates of pay for a common classification. Accountant would be one that we've looked at quite frequently. And with 10 different pay rates, there's no one number that's out there. And so the goal is to provide you a pay range for each and every job that's competitive throughout the marketplace. So when we do that, designing it 87.5 to 112.5, or if we want to do something a little bit different than that, but it makes you competitive across the marketplace. And realistically, the 87.5 to 112.5% step plan is approximating the 25th, through the 75th percentile of the marketplace. So again, you're competing in the good portion of the market where you want to be. The other part is that, you know, what we've found, especially in the public sector, is that wage increases don't always keep up the way they should, for whatever reason. But having a wage plan that at least allows some movement through that, even if that range itself is out of whack a little bit, unless the employee's at the maximum, that's a whole different problem then. But if the range is out of whack and you need a year or two to buy, you know, moving employees through those steps can do that without having to adjust the entire structure. But again, the point is that having the full range of pay gives you some flexibility. And the other part is just having some shelf life, that, you know, as time moves on, you know, most organizations fall a little more out of whack with the marketplace. Having a range of pay allows you to have that longer shelf life, so you don't have to keep going back to this each and every year. You don't want to do it, we don't want to do it, so let's get this right. And so in terms of the goals of what you're designing, these are not your numbers, so if anyone starts writing them down, you're going to have different numbers. But you know what you're trying to do from a pay standpoint, and if you were to adopt and this is a little bit broader of a pay structure, you know, with 85%, but still you're looking for those first 3 or 4 steps. That's where we would like to bring people into the organization. We also know that sometimes you need to bring people up a little bit more. They have additional experience. They have you know, current rate of pay that you know that you would need to pay them more to bring them in. So again, the ideal range in that reddish area, we want to be market competitive in that healthy middle of the structure, if at all possible. And then as you get up to the top, you know, that you're trying to put a premium. We want to keep you around a little bit longer, so we're willing to put a little bit more money on the table. You know, that you're a top performer, and we want to make certain that we're paying you competitively so you don't jump ship. You know, so whatever reasons, but there's some value to paying just a little bit more at that top of the pay schedule, so you don't have the retention issues that many organizations are facing right now. And so again, you can see that the ideal market range is where we would hope each job would be competitive. When it comes to the plans, you know, we break it out in the following 2 slides to 2 different structures, but really we have some commentary on the hybrids, and I'll leave some of this for you. We've already talked about some of these things. But with a step plan, what you're normally looking at is it takes employees 8 to 15 years to get to the maximum, depending on how it's developed. You get much beyond that, it becomes a little less meaningful. And quite honestly, in today's marketplace, I'd say much more, you know, much more than 15 years. It's hard to see employees in careers like I think what we've become accustomed to in our lifetime, which, you know, come, stay, work for a lifetime in the public sector, is something that's kind of eroded over the course of the last couple of decades. And I would say, you know, if you were dealing with the hybrid structure, 3 to 4 years to get to that midpoint. So I'd say, and that's a typographical on my part, length of time from minimum to maximum 8 to 15. It should be 3 to 4 years to the midpoint for hybrid structures. You don't always have the tools that you need if you are looking to reward top performers. There are ways that you can look at that. We can talk about that later if you want a step structure, but still looking for strategies to reward your top performers. We talk about predictability with the step structure. But with predictability comes that, you know, that there's a regular set allotted amount that's afforded to each step. And if the intent is to place employees on the next successive step each and every year until they reach the maximum, that's an added cost in addition to what you need to do to keep the structure competitive. And I'll talk about this one on a slide we have a little bit down the road here. With performance plans, and again, as we already talked about, they tend to be a little bit broader. Adjusting the structure doesn't necessarily increase the budget. However, if you don't increase the budget at the same time you're increasing the structure, you can create problems, you know, employees slipping, if you will, in that wage structure. Performance really does need to take center stage. We've seen some organizations look at teams or overall organizational performance. Now that's a lot easier in a private organization where profit loss is the end goal for each and every department in the organization, where in a county government, you might have 20, 25 departments going 20 to 25 different directions. And so, but performance certainly needs to do that. But I would also say that this is, when people do this and don't do it right, is where a lot of the challenges settle in. And we'll show some examples of kind of how to mitigate some of those challenges. But if it's not done and done right, and if the mindset of how things are approached, that meeting expectations shouldn't be as just average or a C grade, that meeting expectations should be a high bar. The notion that once an employee has met that, substantially exceeds or exemplary or whatever that measure is, that they always have to be there. And so those are some of the fallacies that really kind of drag down. And I talk about a structure collapsing under its own weight. If everybody's a top performer, and so you're giving everybody top performer raises each and every year, year over year, it truly does become unsustainable. So managing those expectations with a performance plan takes a lot of attention, a lot of auditing of performance evaluations to ensure consistency, and the commitment to fund it. And so that's why it's not that we're afraid of performance plans. We've got an entire half of our business, the private sector practice that, like I said, is focusing on these almost exclusively. It's just that funding performance structures in the public sector and knowing that performance is kind of an open question, that there might be arguments to, from an open record standpoint, that the performance evaluations themselves might be limited in their release, but the raises aren't. And so everybody knows how everyone else was evaluated just by virtue of the merit increases, because that is employee pay being public. So as we go down this path, I think it's just important to remember. I talked about this and I said I'd come back to this. So this is a good example of, on a step structure, there's two conversations, and probably ones that you're familiar with from existing pay plans or other environments, that the first conversation that occurs on an annual basis is, all right, how have things shifted in the last year? What's CPI? What's the employment cost index? What are other communities around us doing? All of those questions that you probably ask in September, October. We just completed or are just completing our annual survey for wage increases. But is, what do we need to do to stay competitive with the outside world? And so in this example, it's a 2% increase. So moving from 23, looking at the green there, moving from 2313 to 2359, that's your market adjustment to the structure. 2%, that's what's lifted. But also in a step plan, in most cases, that the step movement is an annual event. And so it'd go from 2313 to 2359, and then 2359 to 2423 based on step movement. Now that adds up. I don't think it adds up to an amount that's more than what is normally seen in terms of wage increases. It's just distributed differently under a step model. And the reason why we have this, and for all the reasons we discussed before, that internal balance, where the first one, keeps you competitive with the outside world. The second one, the yellow one, keeps you competitive internally. Newer employees should most likely be paid less than longer term employees, as long as everything else remains equal. The new employee doesn't have more experience elsewhere, those sorts of things. I would presume that if an employee has stuck around for a little bit, they've demonstrated some level of performance that's acceptable to you. But again, that notion of moving through the structure does it. So budgeting and planning and talking about those two types of increases are important. No, you're fine, Heather, you're fine. So when it comes to this notion of pay for performance, we have a lot of organizations saying, well, if we go down this path, how on earth do we fund it? And the first answer is through some difficult conversations and difficult decisions. Truly differentiating performance amongst employees. And so I gave a performance earlier, or performance, goodness, make it sound more important than what it was. I gave a presentation earlier this year, and just came up with a fake example here. The company of 100 employees, and every employee in the company earns $50,000 because it just makes math easier that way. And so, the company looks at it and says, we're going to budget 3.5%, $175,000 for base pay increases. And you kind of look at the performance that they've come up with, and 20% are your high performers. That's your 80-20 rule. Solid performers, 60 people who are doing just fine. Keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate it. The acceptable, improving, and the borderline, there's the opposite end of your 80-20 rule, working in the opposite direction. You're probably 20% of your employees are, I don't say struggling, improving, and I would say, probably that 5%. So in terms of trying to figure out, okay, we've got a pretty decent breakout of performance. How do we fund that? With limited dollars. And so a lot of organizations, a lot of supervisors will take what we call the peanut butter approach, spread everything else out nice and smooth. We don't want to make anybody upset. We don't want to hurt any feelings. And so we're just going to take that 3.5% and distribute it amongst all of the employees equally. Well, and that's kind of the approach under a step structure, to be quite honest. That's what happens is that if you're putting performance at a premium, your high performing employees are going to say that doesn't work for me. That I'm working my fingers to the bone, someone else over here isn't, and they're getting the same increase. And so that's what we hear frequently as the complaint. But if we just tweak it just a little bit, and so if we say to those borderline employees, you know what, 3.5% probably is the least of your concerns. We need to get your performance up to where it needs to be. We'll still give you something. We'll do a 1%. The acceptable, improving, keep plugging along, you'll get this. We're going to dial that back a little bit. Solid performers, we're going to, we budgeted 3.5%, we're going to give you 3.5%. But by doing that, by reallocating the money at the bottom half for your lower performers, you just freed up 1.75% for your higher performing employees under this model. And so that's one way of doing it. Now you can, attack it from different angles and look at different options with that to maybe even free up more money. Maybe the unacceptable performers receive nothing, and doing that might free up. So there's always ways to do it. It just takes the internal discipline to really make that happen. We get to the fun part, and that is plan implementation. And there's a couple things here. One, budget is always in the conversation. I mean, always. And how much money, and at some point, the question is going to come down to, especially when it comes to implementation, how much money do you have available to spend for implementation? Not do you want to spend? I mean, in some organizations, it might be we want to spend as much as we possibly can, and others might be we want to spend nothing. But knowing what you have to spend to stay competitive, we can usually work with an organization to figure out. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But what we're always dealing with is also this notion of happiness. I learned long ago that I have no control over what makes somebody happy. I wish I did. I know that sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but I do know in working with our clients and talking with our boards and councils, we can find a way to be fair. We can look at it and say, we're not going to play favorites. We're going to try to do as much as we can with as little as we have. And so we're going to have to make some decisions about that, but it's going to be fair. If we're fair, I can live with somebody being unhappy. Like I said, I don't prefer it, but it's just what comes with this business. The two main challenges that you have, and I'll show you some examples in just a moment here, but the two main challenges we have are the size of the increase, that the employee might realize coming out of the study. If we were to say, let's adopt based on the step in the new structure that provides an increase in pay, that could be a penny, or that could be $1, or it could be a little bit more than that. But the point is that if you were to say to an employee today, we went through the study, we're going to place you on a new structure, and the amount of your increase for next year is $20.80 or $19.50, depending on your work year, you're probably not going to be met with open arms. And I would say so, especially in today's marketplace. And so we want to look and see if there's options available so you don't fall into those situations. Probably the more prevalent and more difficult one to address is the length of service. All too often we will hear employees say, I've been here 15 years. I believe I should be at the spot in the new structure where someone with 15 years of service should be. And all things being equal, including that they performed acceptably, my answer would be, I absolutely agree with you until you start crunching the numbers. And that's where it usually becomes financially infeasible to do that. And again, as we'll talk in just a moment here, I think we can show an example of that. The one thing that we do have available is that we have, and as we get closer and closer to the end of this process, we'll develop options for you. And so you can test and model and adjust, and we'll hand that off to Dan so he can tinker as you continue to navigate through your budget process. I dropped this last one in here. It seems like it doesn't fit, but it really does, because it affects you long-term with implementing and maintaining the pay structure. And that is, so many organizations, and I shouldn't say so many, but several organizations we've worked with have said, all right, we'll deal with this and then we'll deal with some exceptions after the fact. And that might be absolutely necessary. I'm not saying that it's a matter of that should never be a consideration, but what I do want to reiterate is that it is a very slippery slope. You know, if you make an exception for one department, for one employee based on a set of facts, you should really be prepared to make that exact same exception if someone has the exact same facts. If it is, hey, we've got money to pay for this, whether or not it's a good idea, and you allow it to happen, and be prepared for the next department to do that as well. And I think you create some challenges. So it's just that chain reaction. So what we're trying to do is remove as much of that as possible by coming up with, you know, the fairness-based options, as opposed to trying to meet a number of other issues. So as an example, and this is, again, these are not your numbers, but this is a reliable example of what we would tend to see in implementation of a new structure, that, you know, the step that provides an increase in pay tends to be your lowest, you know, cost option, you know, 313,000, 3.3%. It depends on the organization and their competitiveness. And that's one of the things, you know, that we're working on, is getting the market data updated here so we can have that exact conversation. But that tends to be the lowest cost. And it's not always 5x or 5 times, but, you know, the years commensurate with employment is usually a sizable amount more than that lowest cost, and usually so much so that organizations look and say, we can't even consider that. And so it often falls off the table, as well as time in job falls off the table. But what we do have, and what I was talking about with options, is, you know, looking at that blue one where it says, you know, step provides at least step 3 placement, provided you have at least 2 years in your current position, or 2 years of service with the employer, however you want to view it, that it provides some sort of cushion at the bottom of the structure to bring new employees in, still recognizing some measure of service for your longer term employees, but also understand that you can't recognize every bit of it. But again, so you don't have that bottom of the pay structure compression upon implementation. The last 2 options, again, they can be configured. So if you could, let me just back up here. You know, that Dan will have the ability to look at it and say, well, maybe step 4 in 3 years, step 5 in 5 years, whatever that parameter is. Those last 2 options are accomplishing essentially the same thing, just through different means. I'll just talk about the light orange one, is that you want to make certain that employees, in this case, are receiving a certain percentage increase. And again, that's configurable. If you said we want to make certain there, you know, we were planning on giving a 4% increase this year due to the economy. We want to make certain they get at least 4%. You would be able to configure that and then cost it appropriately. But it gets rid of those pennies, those 2 cents, those 3 cents, and making certain that you're providing at least a measurable increase for those employees. The one thing I will say about this is, when we talk about providing at least a 1%, at least a 4%, whatever number you use, let's just assume that you have an employee who's below the pay structure for this. So, you know, they're below step 1, and it will take 10% to get them on to step 1. It is not 10% plus 1%. You look at it and say that 1% is baked into that 10%. They've gotten at least 1%. Let's move on to the next employee. So there are options, you know, but the one thing that we do know is that it's not inexpensive to implement a pay structure. It's not inexpensive to implement a step structure. And it really does largely depend on where you fall in the respective marketplace. And so that's, again, one of our next steps that we have to get for you, so you can start making some decisions here.
So then we at some point need to begin discussions of the appeals process. Inevitably, there are individuals who want to present additional information. Jobs have changed as we've gone through the process. Maybe they feel like there should be a better explanation of certain job duties. And so we do offer an appeals process. This is something that was included in your agreement with us. So generally appeals happen after implementation. And what we want to talk about here is, we adopt the plan, then we do a pre-appeal. It's not necessarily a formal appeal. We just kind of take a look at it, see if there's anything that we should be looking at. We would work with Dan on some of that. And then there's the information sharing. So at some point, obviously we have to relay the information to the employees. And then they would review that to determine if they want to appeal on a more formal basis. We would then receive those appeals. They would go through administration first to make sure that they fall within certain parameters. And we would want to talk about making sure that there was a process in place. So that leads me to what is or is not an appeal. An appeal is a review of the grade placement. So it's not it's not an appeal of the implementation strategy that is decided on and implemented. It is a review of what grade the position was evaluated and placed in. It's an opportunity to provide a final layer of review to ensure that the hierarchy is as accurate as possible. It's a chance to further clarify the job documentation, which I had mentioned, or details of the job that perhaps weren't otherwise apparent as we were going through that review process. And it gives us a chance to recalibrate jobs that may have changed during the study. I mentioned that. So it's not intended to undermine any of the policy decisions made by you as the governing body. It's not a chance to reward employees for superior performance. So performance isn't a basis for an appeal. It's not a chance to modify the step placement or the implementation strategy that, again, has been approved by you as the governing body. And it is not an opportunity to change the marketplace or the comparables that were adopted by the governing body. So employees, cannot appeal based on what the market or what they believe that the market indicates, or request that additional or alternative comparable agencies are used.
Excuse me for a second.
Yes,
Heather, let me ask a question.
of course.
None of this PowerPoint presentation that you're going over has been available to the executive committee to review prior to this meeting. As I sit here and listen to you and Patrick with regards to this presentation, it's almost like I'm in a working session here, and it's a one-sided, at least up to this point. Are you going to, here's a question I raised to you. Are you going to take up our entire 2 hours for this meeting to make a decision whether we're going to have additional discussion or additional action on this issue?
I guess one, we're almost done with this portion of this. Two, there are policy level decisions that need to be made as part of this process, and without you having the necessary information on what decisions need to be made, it's kind of difficult. And the third piece is that we need to figure out what your intentions are with this process. And so I would hope that the next level of conversation would be, are you trying to accomplish it yet for 2023? Or are you pushing this off? And that's some conversations I know Heather's had, and I don't want to step on her toes, but no, we're on the very back end of what we want to present to you this morning, and we're hoping for some dialogue.
Well, let me ask Dan here that, is this something that we should have a meeting with these folks in alone with these folks? because of the amount of time and effort that's being put into this, and they're asking for direction from us. We can't give direction unless we know the process. So some of the process that's been explained to us at this point in time.
Well, I guess there are some questions you can answer. I mean, we can set up another meeting for sure. But there are some questions that I think you can answer. Right? Is like one of the questions that come up is, do we want to try to implement a new pay structure for the next budget year? So, you know, while we may not get to anywhere where we want to be, do we want to at least start the pay structure in 23, or do we want to push it off till 24? You know, there's arguments on both sides for that. You know, one is, you know, if we push it, if we start right away, we don't have a lot of time to adequately discuss it. However, if we push it off, I mean, the whole market wage portion of it is going to be obsolete.
Well, I don't believe we have time to do this between now and November when we're passing the 23 budget.
Okay.
I may be wrong. Let me yield to the chair to see, or the rest of the board. Well, what do you guys think? Is it logical to go through what we just heard this morning to put something in place for 23? I don't think so.
Well, I guess Heather and I were talking about this yesterday. Heather, can you sort of explain the reasons why it would be good to implement immediately, and realizing that there is a desire to discuss the topic further, and that might push the implementation off?
Well, the thing is, let me interject you just a second. When you come to the board here and ask for a discussion and action, when you come like Heather and Patrick just now today, that should be a critique. It shouldn't be a half hour or 45 minutes or an hour into our meeting. We have a pretty full agenda.
Okay.
I don't think the board here wants to be here all day.
No, I agree.
If we're here by still at lunchtime, we're kind of upset because we schedule these meetings for 2 hours.
Yeah.
These guys are coming into an hour.
Okay.
And Patrick says, we got some time to go yet.
Okay. So would you like to reschedule this meeting specifically just for this?
I'm just one person. I can't answer that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, other members of the committee?
Well, like Mike said, before we get into a big discussion on this, I would appreciate some paperwork so we know what the hell we're talking about.
Okay.
Nothing here that deals with this at all.
Okay. Well, I guess then we should, Mr. Metzinger.
I would like to wonder if the finance committee has looked at this also. Are they, to me, are we going to have 2 separate meetings, or how much funds do we have available that we can actually use now for this? I think it's a good presentation, but I don't think that unless we have the finance committee together, we can make any decisions. You know, I think probably right now we're in the bottom part of salaries right now. I'm sure we are. So, you know, I would say that the first screen that they brought up, I'd say we're probably in the bottom 10%. You know, but, you know, I think I would like to see some figures as far as how much money are we talking about if we decide to give a 4% raise or a 3% raise, or which plan we're going to implement, and how much is this going to cost? Because, you know, we're listening to all this, and yeah, this is nice. We know what, you know, I guess, you know, the thing is, do we have any recommendations? And when people have worked here for how many years and they hire somebody, they get more money than the people that are working here, you know, so something has to be done. And I think we shouldn't just keep passing it off until the next year. But I think in order, if we're going to do this budget, we're going to have to know stuff. We're going to have figures, and, you know, we're going to have to see some things.
So if I might raise a point here, because I think this is, it really does turn into a little bit of a chicken and egg conversation. And I'm hearing a little bit of this, that how much is it going to cost? How much do we have to spend? Is that chicken egg conversation that upon us, I say us, Heather working with the county, that we might delay this until 2024, our first instinct is we're right at the point of beginning the market pricing. We don't want to, nor do you want us duplicating work that if you're holding off to 2024, we're going to put that on hold and we're not going to price it until we have 2024 or 2023 data in our system. That if you want to do it right now, we can proceed full steam ahead and get this thing fine-tuned and ready to go in relatively short fashion here. But we need to have some indication that there's some intent, and I know that there's been some talk about building certain percentages for wage increases into the budget. If those recommendations have been made internally, we can certainly help you fit within those parameters and allocate that money, in a more efficient fashion. If you want to give everyone a certain percentage, more power to you. But this is a big deal. I mean, in terms of the decisions you make, on a basis, and I'm not trying to inflate what we do, but at the same time, when you start talking about employee compensation, I would have to imagine that's the largest percentage of your budget in terms of expense. And so making certain that you have the information necessary to make these decisions. I understand you've got a packed agenda. I was a public sector employee, as was Heather, for a major portion of our career, and these meetings can get cumbersome. Our fear is always that when we get to the end, is that they didn't give us enough information to make the decisions we needed to make. That's simply what we are trying to accomplish this morning. And so if you need to have another meeting to have this conversation, if you need to talk amongst yourselves to figure out, is it financially feasible to do anything for 2023? Then by all means, let's do so. But we need to get some guidance, and whether it is you empowering Dan to make certain decisions or being prepared as a board to make those decisions, we need to get to that stage at some point in the very near future.
So addressing the budget numbers, one of our biggest problem is we don't know what our levy is going to be yet. The state has not released the levy worksheet yet. So we don't know exactly where we are there. I expect that's going to be coming out next week. Another issue is something later on the agenda is the debt levy discussion, which I can briefly touch upon. I mean, there are certain things we can do with our yearly spending that are legally allowed to be put on debt levy, which frees up general levy money. So that's another topic for discussion. So what I'm gathering, you guys would like to have some time to think about this and have a different meeting on this topic alone.
It would be helpful to me to have some background information.
Yep.
Before.
All right, so Heather, can you guys put together some background information we can send the committee?
Can you define what background information is? That's a pretty broad question.
Well, Mr. Vitek, Mr. Metzinger, what kind of things, Mr.
Well,
Berlin?
even an example of what you're presenting here today. I mean, you could put it online and I could.
Oh, yeah, that's easy. The presentation's yours.
Excuse me. The thing is, for 2023, we've asked our managers to increase their budget by what percent? Was it 5 or 6 or 7 or
8.6
8%?
is what we're looking at.
So this is a number these people need to know.
Well, they know that. They know
They
8.6.
already know that.
Yeah,
you
and they
can-
have actually a copy of our working budget.
Okay,
And you, just for the record, and I just want to make certain, I'm sorry for interrupting here, but I think it's important to hear that for 8.6% in new wage spend, you can do a ton from an implementation standpoint.
then at this point in time, if we can do a ton or a variation, you folks can, Patrick and Heather can, and your staff can focus and give us options on those ton of issues or directions or alternatives so that we can review and make a decision, take some action.
So to
Is that
me,
doable for the 2023 budget? That's the question.
so I guess I want to understand. So are you asking for what it would look like if it was just an across the board 8.6%? What it would look like if we instituted a pay structure where we gave everybody a certain percentage wage, but we used the rest, say 4%. And we used that 4.6% in extra dollars to get people closer to wages where they should be. Or I guess,
Aren't these a recommendation that Heather and
well, they're going to recommend a pay structure, and then we have to decide how we want to fill it in and implement it. So
Yeah.
I guess I would recommend we hold another meeting down the road and we come up with these different options. We have a better idea where our dollars are at.
Well, when we say down the road, I don't mean months down the road.
No, I
I'm
mean later
thinking
this month.
more quickly.
I mean later this month.
So from our standpoint, if the committee is looking at that 8.65% and you're looking for options from us using that number, we can certainly pull those options together based on the scenarios that we provided today. Really, it would be helpful to know if you're leaning towards a step structure versus a pay for performance. That's a mouthful structure, so that we can build those numbers and options from an implementation standpoint around that, if that would be possible, just to receive that direction today. Then we can be better prepared with that information for the next meeting.
And I'm going to recommend that they do a step structure. Now, I want to point out, even if we do a step structure, in coming years, say we only get $1,000 levy increase next year. That doesn't mean the county board does not have to fund a step increase. I know there's been years when there's 0% pay raises. And if money gets tight, the county board can say, well, there'll be a 0% step increase and there'll be a 0% pay increase. Or there'll be a 1% step increase and a 0% pay increase. So they can split it however the way they want. This is just setting the structure to give you the options down the road.
Richard? This is Bill. Do we have longevity pay now?
No, we don't. Only the sheriff's deputies have longevity pay.
Pardon me?
Only the sheriff's deputies.
Okay. I think it's really important that when we have another meeting, and I didn't realize that we have the funds available to give an 8.6% increase in salaries.
Well, some of the departments came in under budget, including the 8.6. And, there's a few debt levy tricks.
So I think it's important to have another meeting. And I would recommend that we have the finance committee join in the meeting, or we join them. Because, they're going to have the same questions we are, and that's where we'll get the money from. So I think what they presented, I wrote a lot of different things down, and it's, it's not up to them to make a recommendation. It's up to us to decide what we should do, but I think we should do something for 2023. We're losing a lot of employees that are going elsewhere and getting more money. And I think we need to act now, and down the road, we can hash everything else out, but I think another meeting in September or early October would be appropriate.
Well, the finance committee already has a meeting set for the 22nd. So if the two chairmen happen to be in this room, if you want to set a joint meeting, or at least the first part of the finance committee to do this topic. So it'd be the first agenda item. And Heather and Patrick can send the PowerPoint, we'll put it in the finance packet. And we can discuss the issue further. And we should have our levy number by then and have a much better clue where money is.
At that point in time, oh, this is Mike, excuse me. This is Mike again. I'm on the chairman of the finance committee. At that point in time in this meeting, if it's item number 1 on the agenda, are we going to allocate a time for this so that we can keep things moving along?
Well, I don't think Patrick and Heather have an infinite amount of time, so yes, we could set a fixed time period.
Dick? What? Executive meeting and a finance meeting collectively to address this issue.
Yeah. Hopefully we will get that information we need before that.
Right. Okay, so if Patrick or Heather, are either of you available on the 22nd? We'll put you on at 9 o'clock, first thing in the morning. First thing, of course, after public comment and stuff.
So the question I have right now, Mike again here, the decision that we have to make today, is this being pushed on to the 22nd?
Well, I think they do need some direction on whether or not we want to move to a pay structure of some sort, because right now we don't have one. It's all ad hoc.
Well, the purpose of the wage study is to develop a pay structure.
Well, right, but are we looking at a step structure or performance like they do in the private sector, or some sort of mixture? And my recommendation is the step structure like most public entities do.
And that would be our recommendation right now.
Now, we can always change that down the road, but at least they have something to work with.
And of course, that would be subject to the performance, the annual performance evaluation.
Yes,
To pigeonhole where that pay structure is going to be on an incremental basis.
right.
And the whole thing is to get this in line with the, what do you call it, other
Right.
businesses out there.
Or in our neighboring government is bodies.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, Heather, could you aside from the PowerPoint, could you include some better definitions of what a step scale is and what a performance scale is? If you have anything out there that it's easy for people to understand.
Yeah, I will send a copy also of the article that we crafted, well, 6 years ago now, but I think it, even though it could stand some updating for some other challenges, it still holds true to this day in terms of the challenges with pay performance in the public sector. Again, it's not to say that you shouldn't want employees performing at a high level. I think there's just some, especially if you don't have a performance management system in place today that's working well, you're asking for a lot of problems trying to do one on the fly. But as Dan said, that's not a forever decision. You can say today we do not have a performance-based structure, but our goal is within the next 2 to 4 years to get there, and we need to get the performance tool done. We need to get our managers trained. We need to get a test run or two with the employees, through performance, so we know that it's measuring what we intended to perform. Now we're ready. Or you might get to the point and say, you know what, we think performance is great. We think paying our employees competitively is great. We don't want to marry those two things together. And we have a lot of organizations who have said exactly that, where both are equally important, but we're just not going to tie the two together. So I will send some information, and if we have other information available to us, we'll be happy to send it your way.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right.
And Heather.
All right,
Sorry, and circling back to the question about the 22nd, I am available. Patrick, are you?
I am too. Yes.
Okay.
okay, are we comfortable with that? And I would say Mr. Metzinger's step structure addresses your issue of longevity. So
Day of the week, is that
it's a Thursday.
Thursday?
Yeah. I think somebody's using the room on Tuesday, which is why we went to Thursday.
So the plan is on the 22nd, we're going to discuss a step structure. Is that what the recommendation is?
Yes, that's what the recommendation is. No, that's the recommendation from the consultant. So do we want to? Well, you don't have to make a decision that right now. If we have consensus, that's an issue that we'll discuss at the next meeting, then we'll bring that up. You don't have to vote. We'll just ask for a consensus. Yes, this is what we want to consider.
Richard? I would like to make a motion that we discuss the step structure at the next meeting and get kind of some figures. That's my motion.
Would that include some additional information that we could study ahead of time?
Yeah, with figures and what we're actually talking about, so we can kind of,
Right, and again, part of the numbers depends on when the state releases the levy worksheet. I anticipate that's gonna be on the 15th, but you never know, so.
that's my motion.
I'll second.
Marty, I have a motion by Bill Metzinger. Would you like to read the motion back? It's a little lengthy.
I guess my motion is on the 22nd that we view the step structure proposal and then we can make the decision there with the finance committee.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, seconded by Marty Vitek. One thing I'd like to add to that, it's imperative that we get this information far enough in advance that we can go through it and make an informed decision on it. Rather than just shooting in the dark like we are now. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Do we have? You want to, Marty seconded, do we have we'll vote on this right now. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, thank you, Patrick and Heather.
Thank you.
All right, are we done with 5?
Yes,
Thank you, Carlson Detman firm for your presentation. As soon as we get more information, we'll get into this a little deeper. All right, we'll go to number 6, discussion action, resolution requesting an increase in shared revenue for the state budget.
this is basically something we do every year, every biennium, ask the state to increase funding. So, not that it'll do any good, but if you don't ask, you don't get.
So do we have a resolution someplace? Is it in our packet?
And
No, it's not. So this will be requesting a draft one for the county board. Or we can draft one and bring it back here. So do we want to draft a resolution doing so?
It's gonna be a boilerplate resolution.
Yep.
Anyhow.
Yep, it's gonna be like we
Motion.
have in the past.
Motion to pass a boilerplate resolution to the state of Wisconsin for this revenue. Request.
Marty,
Did you just make a motion, Mike?
Yeah.
I'll second it. It never worked before, so we can always hope, I guess.
Yeah.
You got it on file.
Discussion. This will go to the full county board then?
Yes,
apparently this won't get on the WCA docket.
no, it won't. No, that had to have been done by June or something. And number 7, we get to, I'm gonna ask that you table that. WCA is gonna come out with a sample resolution on that shortly. There's been a lot of talk in the legislature about what they're gonna do, so I guess I'd like you to table number 7.
Let's finish number 6.
Yeah, oh yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Call for the vote.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve a boilerplate resolution for shared revenue, increase in shared revenue. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
you say we want to table item number 7? Yeah. Motion table number 7. Charging units, stations.
I will second that motion. Table it.
Motion and a second on the table to postpone number 7, discussion resolution requesting the counties provide a charge fee for charging stations for electric cars. All those in favor say aye of postponing that. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 8, discussion and action, Ashland County Fair Board Committee per diem.
Mr. Metzinger?
Right now, Kathy Schutte says she is the representative for the Ashland County Board for the fair. And she has been reporting to us, the county board, and she would like a per diem. And we've talked about it several times and she's brought it up, and I felt that we should discuss it at the executive committee. Kathy has done a lot for the county. Before she kind of took over, David Martinson was kind of, he would go to all the fair committee meetings. So, but like I say, Kathy has done a lot. She goes to all the meetings, but I don't know if that warrants getting paid to do this. I talked to Brett Martinson, who's the president of the Fair Association, and he told me that there's like 18 people on the fair board and 2 people get paid, the secretary and the treasurer. Those are the only people that get paid. If there is anybody else that gets a per diem or anything, they can't vote on fair issues. So I am not in favor of paying anyone to be on the fair board, but I would like to see, I know Kathy does an excellent job, but I would actually like to see if there was other people that are interested in being on the fair board besides Kathy being on there. But if they wanted to learn more about the fair, you know, that these people could be on there also. So, but I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but I'm not in favor of paying it up for, but I think it needs to be brought up and discussed by other members, because that's only my opinion. But I just wanted to emphasize that she has done a lot and she has attended a lot of meetings. But to me, I think that being on the county board is kind of like, you're not going to make a lot of money on the county board. It's a volunteer service to the community. And I think she does an excellent job. And I don't know what the rest of the members feel, but I thought that the executive committee should discuss this, unless, you know, if there's someone that feels she should be paid, you know, it would have to be passed by the county board, but it's our recommendation. So if we decide to table it, you know, then that's where it would end. So I'd like the rest of the committee's input.
Yeah, Chairman Poofall. Chairman Poofall,
Yes.
this is Supervisor Murdick. I don't want to see this tabled. I would like to see it dealt with and dealt a death blow. We have enough expenses right now. If we start putting members who want per diems to attend meetings, which they have every right to attend meetings, then we're going to have people say they want to be on the Glidden Fair board or the Butternut Fair board. I'm sorry, but I'm opposed to adding any more expense to the county board side of the ledger here. I mean, we're running enough deficits trying to get employees pay raises. And I just think if you want to be on a fair board, join the fair board and be on it. Whether they pay them or not, that's their business. But I don't think the county board needs any more fees going out for per diems for stuff that's not sanctioned by the county board. That's the Maringo Fair. If we open that door, we're going to open the door for everybody else to come and ask for per diems. I didn't get on the county board to get paid. I got on the county board to serve. And if you want to attend meetings, and I attend town meetings and stuff like that, that's my choice. And I think the executive committee, it's up to you guys, but I think you should just kill this right now while you have a chance. Thank you.
I'd like to say a word about that. Kathy does an awful lot of work with the Fair Board. The only problem that I would have with the per diem is the county itself controls how many meetings other boards have. We have no control over how many meetings that they can have. So if they want to have a meeting every week for 6 months, that's going to be an expensive proposition. The only way that that would work is if there was something in the paperwork that put a limit on maybe 6 meetings a year or something like that. I don't begrudge the fact that we should have a representative on there. I think it's a very, very important part of our organization. It actually gives us some exposure to the down county people. I've been to other fairs and I think they're a real bonus to the counties itself when they present something like I just got back from the fair in Glidden, and the way that thing is run in the facility that they have is just, in my estimation, remarkable. And I wish we could improve our county board, county fair to that extent, which would involve, I'm sure, county getting involved monetarily. In that situation down in Glidden, it's all funded by the local people. And it's just remarkable what they have. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, to get back to this situation with Kathy, this will have to go to the full board. I don't have a problem with paying a representative as long as we have some sort of control over the amount of meetings. And I don't know how we can do that. So I would make a recommendation that we approve that with that stipulation, that we limit the amount of meetings to maybe one a month prior to the fair itself. Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
Mr. Chairman. Supervisor McKenzie asked me to make a comment for him. He essentially agrees with Mr. Mertig. He's opposed to providing per diems for the fair or any other organization that's not sanctioned by the county board or part of the county board for much the same reason that Mr. Mertig said.
Excuse me, who are you talking about?
Supervisor McKenzie asked me to relay that message. Matt McKenzie. So
Okay.
he wanted to be here, but he couldn't be. So he asked me to state that he's opposed to providing the per diem.
Well, it's up to this committee to make a recommendation, and they can. speak
Yeah,
his
I realize
piece at the
he
full
just
board
asked me to
meeting.
make the comment because if he were in the audience, he would have a right to speak. So.
Yes, Marty.
In the past, the county has provided funding. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, of course, but in the past, the county's provided funding for the fair down in Ringo. And it seems to me that if the fair board thinks it's necessary, they should use that money for that purpose and just leave it at that.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this and send it to the full board with the stipulation that we have to be able to regulate the amount of meetings that they would be eligible for.
All right, I'll second that. Let's go.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table.
Who made the second, please?
Mike,
Mike Berlin, second.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chairman Poofall?
Yes,
Yeah, this is Gary. Time for questions, but I will tell you why I'm adamantly opposed and will be if this goes to the full county board. Is that's not a county committee. Never has been, never will be. It's a fair in Marengo that has a name, Ashland County. It's not sanctioned by the county other than the county gives them money. And like someone said, we may not in the future if our budget's tight. If we open that door, whether it's this committee or the full county board, I guarantee you, I will have people at the board meetings requesting to be paid to join the Glidden Fair or the Butternut Fair, Pioneer Days and Butternut. This has become a political issue where somebody who thinks that you're underpaid as a county board supervisor, and that's not why they should have gotten on the county board. If they want to attend those meetings, so be it, let them attend it, but we shouldn't be paying people to attend meetings because we're going to open a door that we're not going to be able to shut. Thank you.
well, in response to that, Gary, there is a big difference in funding a representative for the Ashland County Fair. We are Ashland County, as opposed to the Glidden Fair or the Butternut Fair. There's a big difference there. So I don't think that that's going to happen, but whatever. All right, I made the motion
Discussion yet? Please,
and,
discussion,
pardon?
more discussion. I think that the Ashland County Fair should be continued to be given money to because I think it's an excellent thing. But I am in disagreement with you, Richard. I think that she should not be paid. And I think it should be also opened up that if there's any other county board officials that would like to be on, be made aware of when they meet and stuff so that they could attend.
All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Lori, can we have a roll call?
Dick Poofall,
Yes.
Mike Berlin,
yes,
Bill Metzinger,
No,
Marty Vitek,
No,
feel a tied vote.
By Robert's rules, a tie vote fails.
Pardon me?
Under Robert's rules, a tie vote fails. Mr. Bartik's not on the committee,
Not a executive member.
so the motion fails.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we forward this on to the full county board for discussion and vote. Our recommendation was a tie. So we have no recommendation.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? Motion fails.
Number 9, discussion action, health and human services hiring requests.
Terry, are you online?
Yes, I am. In your packet, there is information on the request to hire another children's long-term support case manager. This is a fully funded position. As my written report indicates, although it is not an entitlement, officially, unofficially, and effectively, it is an entitlement. So any child who is eligible for these services needs to be screened. And if they are functionally eligible, they need to be served within 45 days. Since this became an unofficial entitlement, we have had 25 extra youth apply and be eligible. We have done some creative shifting of our case management positions. So we had one position that was specifically for the Children's Long-Term Support Program. And we had one position that was effectively supposedly only for the Coordinated Services Team position. Because of the influx in children, we have had the Coordinated Services Team, CST position, take on part of a caseload for children's long-term support. Both of those case managers are well beyond their capacity to serve children. This is a fully funded position. It is fully funded by the state. In the event there are some startup costs that would not be covered, we have some mental health block grant funds that could be used, although it should be 100% funded. But regardless, it will be 100% funded. I guess just to add one more thing to that is these are kids who we really need to serve in the community and provide services for them so that we don't have to place them outside of the community, which then gets into a lot of trauma for the youth and family and really increases exponentially the cost of caring for these children. So it's a preventative program, it's fully funded, and they can't keep up with the caseload. So I'm requesting another position for this program.
Richard?
Bill.
This is Bill. Terry, has the Health and Human Services Committee talked this over?
It's actually on the agenda for the 21st.
When would this take place, as far as when would it happen if we agreed to this?
We would start advertising as soon as we get approval. And the funding is there as soon as we would get approval.
Bill,
I'll make a motion that we go on with this request.
Could you use your microphone, please?
Sorry. I would make a motion that we go along with hiring a children's long-term support case manager position, as long as there's no cost to the county.
This is Marty
Marty.
Vitek. I'll second it.
I have a motion by Bill Metzinger to approve. Second by Marty Vitek. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The second position that we have was actually put out for a request for proposal. This is for our assistant corporation counsel. We have had Griff Nordling in that position since I think 1999 was the contract we found. And he has been providing the service to us since. He has since indicated he would like to retire at some point, for sure by the end of this year. So we received two proposals. They were in your packet. And I guess we at the county have looked at the amount of cases that we've had versus both of these proposals. And I don't know if you want me to give a recommendation, or Dan, if you want to give a recommendation for which one.
I believe we settled on Clark and Clark being the most cost effective.
Just like to add to that, one puzzling thing is that this isn't on the agenda.
Hiring request.
It's under what?
Hiring, it's a hiring request, so it's number 9 or whatever. There's 2 hiring requests on the agenda. So it is.
I only see one.
Yeah, but it's under number 9.
Well, that's why it would be nice to have some paperwork with these
The paperwork for those was in the packet.
issues I know what the hell we're talking about.
The paperwork for both of those is in the packet.
This is Mike, make a motion to go with the recommendation Clark and Clark. Most cost effective on a presented RFP.
Bill,
I will second that motion if we go Clark and Clark to replace Norland.
I'm sorry, Mike, will you give us that motion once more?
My motion is to go with the recommendation of the administrator and the director, Terry Birmingham, Clark and Clark, being the cost effective on the RFP given to us, request for proposal.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table to go with Clark and Clark.
Discussion.
Yes, Bill.
What are we paying Norland now? How are we paying him? Are we paying him so much a month or so much an hour or what's his salary now?
It's in, that is in the paperwork.
No, that isn't.
Kelly,
It's on mine.
Kelly Madej
$4
is
an
here.
hour.
Push the
That-
center one. I don't see it.
Clark and Clark.
You can hear me?
Yeah, but we're not hiring him. Go ahead, please.
What I can tell you is from the contract that I got, which is again, like Terry said, from 1999, it's split between child support, the county, and Health and Human Services. And from what I understand, child support pays 85%, Health and Human Services pays 10%, and the county pays 5% of his salary. I can tell you, I currently pay him $3,200 a month is what I pay, and that should represent 80 to 85% of what he's being paid. And I can't tell you what the rest of them pay.
I don't have the specific numbers, but I think it's around $4,000 a month. But then in addition to that contract, we pay him a separate fee to do some extra work for us, which includes termination of parental rights for the children's unit and some other permanency issues for the children's unit. This would be inclusive, well, this would be an hourly rate, but inclusive of all those responsibilities.
Can
I can also say too that, so right now, we are also paying staff members that are in the child support office to do the legal secretary work for the adult services unit. So any adult EDs. So going with Clark and Clark, their legal staff, their legal secretarial staff would be taking that over.
So correct me if I'm wrong, and this is just renewing? Or do we have them on payroll already?
No, we currently have Griff Nordling on payroll and he's retiring. So this would be taking on a different assistant corporation counsel.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on this to retain Clark and Clark for legal services. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to number 10, change the resolution regarding carbon credits, change Blue Source to a new and add American Carbon Registry. Dan, you're gonna have to explain this.
Okay, yep. So this, everybody remembers the carbon credit resolution we passed a while ago. So the company Blue Source got sold, who we made the deal with. So the new company Anew wants their name inserted instead of Blue Source. So literally, we take the exact same resolution, strike out Blue Source, add Anew in their place, and add American Carbon Registry, who's the market exchange for carbon credits. So it's exactly the same contract, just changing that one, those two words.
So subject to change, we pass this goes back to the county board. for
Yes.
Final approval.
Yep.
Motion to make the change.
I will second that motion, Richard.
All right, we have a motion on the table to change that resolution by Mike Berlin, seconded by Bill Metzinger. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 11, United States Court of Appeals Sanborn decision.
All right, everybody should have had a copy of this, and sure all of you, everybody's read it. Everybody has their own opinions on it. This is just for discussion. If there's anything the committee wants to discuss about that, I can tell you the state has not made a decision to appeal or not. We have until approximately November 14th, I believe, to appeal to the, or give or take a day or two, to the United States Supreme Court. The difficulties I can see coming up for us that you should be aware of are, one, if the state appeals, where does that leave us? Because the Seventh Circuit has already said certain properties are not taxable. So if the state appeals, we would need a stay order from the US Supreme Court to stop enforcement of the Seventh Circuit decision in order to continue to tax those parcels. Barring a stay order, those parcels aren't taxable, and we have to abide by the Seventh Circuit decision because federal law takes supremacy over state law. And that puts us in direct conflicts with state law. So that brings a problem for us. The problem if the state doesn't appeal is we don't exactly know which parcels are exempt. You know, we don't know. The Department of Revenue is going to have to redo the whole equalization for both the town of Sanborn and the county and all the other towns that have small parcels in them. And that's a mighty big hurdle to cross before taxes have to go out. So, you know, I guess it's a giant mess.
Does that mean that the settlements with the other units of government will stop with this ruling?
Well, that's the problem. If there's a stay order from the US Supreme Court, that means those properties are technically still taxable under Wisconsin law. And so we would have to send out the tax bills and we'd have to settle with the municipalities. If there is no stay order, it means the Seventh Circuit ruling holds. We can't collect taxes on those parcels, and if we don't collect taxes, we're not paying out the municipalities. So and the timing of this, November 14th, gets us right into when taxes have to go out.
So Dan, what is your recommendation?
I don't have any recommendation. This is more so everybody's aware of what's going on and the complications that are coming up. So I don't think there's any action needed, but
So what kind of action are you looking for on
I'm
this?
not looking for one. This is more of discussion. The clerk
Strictly-
puts discussion
Strictly
action.
informational.
It's strictly informational and discussion if the executive committee wants to discuss anything.
Bill,
This is Bill. I talked to Dave Lockren. He's a supervisor of equalization in the Wausau district. I talked to him yesterday or the day before, and I asked him if the reservation land, the Native American land, is figured into equalized value. And he said, yes, for 2022, it is in the equalized value. So I said, well, what's going to happen for 2023? And he said, well, the state has not decided what their recommendations are. but they had told the assessors that they should assess according to certain guidelines, the Native American property. So right now, this year, it's in the equalized value, but we do not know what it's going to do next year. What if the state appeals this and they continue to list it in the equalized value, I would like to see the executive committee or the county board make a recommendation or a request to the state of Wisconsin that we do not have to settle in full in August. I think we have to settle by August 20th. That next year, if it's appealed, that we do not have to settle in full in the town of Sanborn or any of the other towns that we choose. I don't know. Right now, if the county doesn't settle in full, which means to pay like the school, the vocational school, the state of Wisconsin, Ashland County doesn't get paid, they have to pay all the other districts out. If we do not do that, then the interest collected, we 12% interest, 0.5% penalty. The interest goes to the municipalities when the people pay. So like if we decide not to pay or settle in full with the districts, we cannot keep the interest. When people pay, then we have to send the districts, we'd have to send the school, let's say monthly, we'd have to send the school, whoever paid in that district, we'd have to say them the interest plus whatever they paid, which is a lot of work for the treasurers. But if we could, if the state appeals it, what I would like to see is that we are given the opportunity not to settle in full with one district, and that would be the town of Sanborn. So the state doesn't know what they're going to do yet. That's the bottom line.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll move right along. Number 12, discussion on the debt levy.
Okay, again, this is discussion only, no action is requested. So I alluded to this earlier in the discussion. We've been talking to the WCA, and when we look at Wisconsin state statutes, there are certain things you can borrow for. You know, there's a normal infrastructure things and equipment and stuff, but there is a provision in the state statutes that says you can put property and liability insurance on your debt levy every year. And I assume the reason is the state wants to make sure every municipality and county has insurance. There's also a provision saying you can use court orders, debt levy for court orders. So Andy Phillips is going to be giving us an opinion on that, the court order portion, in the very near future. So basically, this is just something for you guys to consider as we move through the budget process. I want you to know that those are tools available out there to help us fund general operations. So when Andy has an exact opinion on the court order portion of it, we can look at what we want to put on, if anything, on debt levy. Right now, I'm planning on putting the property and liability on there as a way to open up revenues. So, any questions?
This is Mike, yes. On these court orders, you know, we need to do, or when it comes to the finance committee, we need to have some numbers as to
Well, yeah.
for 20 and 21 and 22 on how, you know, we can take a look at historically what these court orders are costing us, because this can be kind of like a payback through HHS.
Yeah.
Where you know, this all comes out of their budget.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I want to say it's at least $500,000 every year. Obviously, it fluctuates because you don't know what child placement issues you're going to have each year and what mental health commitments you're going to have each year. But it's been averaging about at least $500,000.
Well, that's a wild card. We don't know from year
Right.
to year.
Right, so that's one of the things, how much can you actually debt levy for these things? Is it based on the previous year or an average of the past couple of years? So Andy will have that number for us shortly, and that I will bring that to Finance Committee on what the actual allowable amount is.
This is not the time to ask, but I will. When's our next finance committee meeting scheduled?
September 22nd.
Okay, that same meeting.
Yeah, we're going to do executive committee before,
All right,
or a joint executive finance and then straight finance.
thank you.
So I just wanted to let you guys know those are tools available as we move through the budget process. So it's not a surprise when you see some of this stuff.
Will this debt levy have to be decided upon before we settle on the budget in November?
Yes, we have to pass the debt levy prior to passing the budget. Now, the debt levy it can be the same day, but in the order of the agenda, you still have to pass the debt levy first.
Marty?
Do you have some ballpark numbers of what kind of money we're talking about?
Right now, debt levy is looking to be at 2 million, the same as this current year. And that's including the property and liability insurance in that 2 million. So, yeah, it is. It's broken up on the spreadsheet.
Any more discussion? You didn't need action on this, did you?
Nope, it's just informational only.
All right. Informational.
Yep.
All right, moving right along. Move to number 13, pay increases for 2023.
All right, discussion again, only, no action needed because action will be maybe taken on the 22nd. So I guess if there's, I've asked all the department heads to budget at the highest rate recommended by the Finance Committee. They recommended 4.2 to 8.6 as a range. So I asked all the department heads to budget it at the 8.6. If we can't make it, we can't make it, but at least, we tried to get as high as possible. Obviously, we're going to be discussing this further on the 22nd. So I don't know if there's any more issues to talk about on this.
Where would we get the 8.6? Do we have surplus money or?
Well, the money is one, there's some cost savings coming out of a couple departments. So like highway department figured the 8.6 in and still came in 60,000 less. HHS figured it in and came after insurance and stuff about 60,000 less. And then there's the freeing up of money from moving the property and liability over to debt levy. So that gets us to there.
Do we have a ballpark figure what this 8.6% is actually going to cost in salary if no matter, just if it was a lump figure?
Yeah, about $400,000.
400,000.
Any more discussion? This is also informational.
Yep, just discussion.
Okay.
We just, because some of this stuff is going to be moving through other issues, some of the stuff is informational for you, so you guys have an opportunity to think about it. And where do you want to go?
All right, we'll go to number 14. Discussion on health insurance for 2023.
Okay, so right now, it looks like insurance is going to have to go up 15.3% to keep the system funded. So that would mean an employee's family plan would go up about $35 a month. Now we just started, actually had our first meeting with M3 yesterday about a wellness plan. And what that would, and we'll be working on that and trying to have a final presentation for Finance Committee on the 22nd. And what that would entail is a number of steps. Step one is everybody has to go to see their primary. So the employee and their spouse, if they're a family, have to see their primary physician once a year. And then they would have to do 2 of, or 3 of 7 things, which we're looking at. One is vision check. Or 2, you can do going to the dentist. 3 could be a flu shot. 4 could be a COVID shot or a booster. 5 could be, any other preventable healthcare thing. And so the goal is, because not everybody needs to go see the optometrist to get glasses. Not every, another one is gender specific preventative care. So it'd be mammograms for women and colonoscopies for men, depending on your age. But not everybody needs to do that, because if you're, 25 years old, you don't need to do any of that stuff. So we're going to try to have a list of things that everybody can check. And what happens if you complete steps 1 and 2, which is seeing your primary and then doing 3 to 7 of the other ones, you would actually get that $35 a month increase rebated back to you. So that's kind of how we're looking at mitigating the health insurance increase for employees. If you engage in healthier lifestyles and do healthier things, you will get the rebate back. We're just not telling you what those healthy things have to be. Some people don't want to get a COVID shot. All right, well, you don't have to get a COVID shot. You can go to see the dentist. Some people are always going to get the shot when it's available. So that's a check for them. So we're going to have this plan for the September meeting, but, is there any opinions on what kind of things we should be moving for, I guess? We want to try to make it as easy as possible so people can meet the goals, but still we want them to actually have to do it and have some accountability. So there'll be, like I said, there'll be an action plan on the 22nd, but again, this is information, so you guys know what's going on.
Information.
Yes, information. That's up to the chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know a bunch of people who are in these type of programs, and they have like these wristband things that measure how many steps you take. And if you take so many steps a day, they get money off of their insurance.
Yep, and that'll be another option in a later phase. A third adoption in the following years would be a list of like 25 things, and you pick 7 or 8 of them. And one of them is walking 5,000 steps a day. One of them is going deer hunting or any hunting, going fishing regularly, joining a golf league. Any number of those things that people normally would do but are physically active. And the goal is to get people to just stay more active and more physical. And the theory is that in the long run, that lowers our health insurance costs. And, with diabetes being so prevalent in the state, because, we're not really a healthy state, being more physically active helps with that. Being more physically active helps with heart health. It helps with your blood pressure. It helps with everything. So we're the goal is to create incentives for people to do more healthy lifestyles, to have their spouses live healthy lifestyles, and to lower our overall costs. Will we see it in 1 year? No, we won't. Will we see costs decrease in 5 years? Probably. So, but really, I wanted to let you guys know this is the direction we're moving.
Okay, if somebody else wants to speak?
Is it
Go
okay with
ahead.
you? I was just wondering, is there any talk about in the wellness plan about reimbursing like other insurances? If you go to Snap Fitness 10 times in a month, the insurance pays for it, or Ignite Fitness or the other fitness place that we have in town. Is there any talk of anything like that?
I don't think initially we're going to do that, because we want to get people at least doing the initial things of just going to their primary doctor, which is free under our health insurance. Going to get your teeth cleaned, that's free under our dental insurance. We want to get people in the habit of just doing the first things first. we're adding a second layer of complexity to it, which would be going to the gym or going hiking or doing whatever. So the first step is just getting people on board and not making it onerous for them to do things. Because if you start giving them all these options, it's just going to drive them nuts. It's like watching Netflix these days. You never know what to watch because there's too many options.
Anybody else?
And just so you know, there is a committee doing the wellness plan. It's myself, Heather Sheedy, largely because we both do health insurance, but also Terry Barningham is on, and then Amber Erickson from Highway. So there's employee input in the whole process.
So we're going to be voting on this at the joint meeting?
We can, well, I think we'll probably be voting on this in October. We'll do a presentation at the joint meeting so everybody can see it, but we'll give you a couple weeks to digest it first.
Okay, and I would appreciate some background on the
Yep.
discussion items before we're voting on it.
Yes, there's no vote today.
Okay, any more discussion? Any more discussion? All right, we'll move right along. So 514 West Main Street building discussion.
Yeah, okay, so everybody at the county board meeting, I stated that we're evacuating the building because the back wall has moved. And I stated this, I should be getting a report, an actual physical report for the PPLE meeting on the 29th, I think it is. Or 22nd, 29th. But it's moved at least a quarter inch since last February. So the opinion of the engineer was that the building is not safe for occupation. So CCS has been moved to the Sanborn building. And the building is essentially vacant except for a bunch of files and stuff which need to be moved. At some point, we're gonna have to decide what to do with that building. Do we keep it and try to fix it? Initial estimate is $500,000. Or do we sell it? Fully, of course, fully disclosing that there's $500,000 worth of repairs that need to be done. I can say the city of Ashland has expressed interest in the building, knowing full well the problems with it. So that's something for us to think about and consider. As soon as the report comes out, I will email it to the entire committee. Well, actually, the entire county board will get the email. At a later date, you can decide what to do with the building. But I guess I know there's questions already on it, so that's why it's on the agenda.
Richard?
Yes, Bill.
I did a little research on this and October 31st, 2005, New Horizons bought that building for $410,000. Okay. And they got foreclosed on by Northern State Bank. And Northern State Bank sold it to Ashland County on April 11th, 2019 for $175,000. That's what we paid for it. And I believe we stuck some money into the building to get it up to where we wanted to use it. I talked to one individual already, and the first question he asked me, he wasn't too concerned about the shape of the building, or he asked me if the building had an elevator. I said, an elevator? He says, well, yeah, it's 3 stories. You know, what he was going to do was fix it up to residential. And I said, well, you know, he said, that's a big thing on a building is if it has an elevator that's working. So, okay. So I think right now prices have come up considerable as far as in the housing industry. And I think what we should do is personally not fix it and try selling it as is. But you know, maybe put a few things out there and just find out what a realtor would actually list it for. But if we had a couple people interested in it before and get an exception to the listing and then see where they come. So that would be my recommendation. I don't believe if we have room, I don't believe we should keep it. And I think we should try to get rid of it as soon as possible so we didn't have to carry it over to winter and have to heat it and stuff. This individual that I had talked to is in the business of fixing buildings up. And I've seen some of the work he's done. He's done excellent work. So, but I think there's a market out for it. I don't think we should stick any more money in it. I think we should dump it.
I will say the city's intent is to fix it and then put it back on the tax rolls. So that's similar to what you were saying. So, but yeah, obviously the county should go for the best deal possible that gets it on the tax rolls as fast as possible.
I'll second that motion.
No, and I would
I'll
ask, I
second
mean,
that recommendation.
again, this is gonna be, I think this is something you guys need to think about and Mr. You know, and when the report comes out, look at the report and then make a decision.
I was gonna have to go to the whole county board anyway.
It is,
so-
yeah. And it's gonna have to go to PPLE too, because it is public property.
Well, then again, we're in September, October, November. We, a lot of part of November, we're in the heating season.
Well, yeah, we're probably into heating season at the end of this month, to be honest.
Could be.
But I'll have the engineers report before the PPLE meeting, which I believe is on the 22nd, which is, or that Tuesday, which is what. No, it's not. It's the following Tuesday because we're going to be at WCA. So I'll have it for that meeting, and then we can take it up as an exec committee in October after you've had a chance to read the engineering report.
So this is the information we have.
Yeah, but it's a big enough issue that I think you guys need to think about and start asking questions.
Dan, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fact that the wall has moved.
Yes.
All right, now is there a lemon law for buildings?
Unfortunately, we bought the building as a foreclosure, which is why it was 175,000. I imagine that was the amount remaining on the original mortgage that New Horizons had. That's what the bank sold it to us for. No, there isn't a lemon law, unfortunately.
Well, why I'm questioning that is I wonder if we were ever informed about that before we bought the building.
I don't know.
Probably
but-
not.
I don't know, but I will say any member of this committee that wants to go look at the building, it will take you over and show you where the wall is moved, and you can see all the wonderfulness in the basement. The old city storm sewer running through the basement with water in it all the time. And
Is the building vacant now?
yes, the employees are all over at CCS now.
W-
There's furniture that's still there, there's files still there, but the employees are now working at Sanborn.
Would you be amenable to have someone look at it ahead of time?
I'm sure if that's,
Okay.
I'd be more, like I said, if you want to, and any member of the county board that wants to go look at it is welcome to. You just tell me the time and you're free and we'll go over there and go look at it.
Bill, I got a question for you. Are you absolutely sure about that price that we paid for that building?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
I checked in the register of deeds and that's the information they gave me. And so I'm absolutely positive because they filed it on the Wisconsin transfer when they recorded the deed. That's what the deeds show, that they paid for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and those dates, that's when the dates were that they signed it. So
So again, I will get you the engineering report before you guys make a decision.
The other
because-
thing is, Bill had indicated, this is Mike again. Bill had indicated too that we may have invested additional money in there to
Yes.
bring it up to some standard for operations.
Yes, we
So
have, and we,
so perhaps, well, it wouldn't take much to go back those couple of years and see what we did.
yeah, I
what
can
our
ask Sue
total
to get a dollar number on that.
investment
Yeah, we can get that for you also. But I'm gonna, the amount we pay and the amount we invested is certainly not, is less than the expense of repair.
You also gotta look in the thing that we actually use the building and we would have had to rent and pay out rent and stuff. And, so, you gotta consider that too, because it wasn't a total loss because we used it for 4 years. So, but as long as there's enough space that we don't have to buy another building, I don't have a problem with that. I think we should move to dump it, and the sooner the better. And people are looking for stuff to work on during the winter, so, maybe it's not too late.
Is there any
Any
other,
more discussion?
is there any direction you want me to go other than getting the report and making it available for viewing?
I'm sorry, I think it's,
I'm saying, is there anything else you want me to look at other than getting you the final engineering report and making the building available for viewing to county board members or any interested party?
I got a quick question for you. Has this been listed yet?
No, it hasn't.
Okay,
No, it's going to take a vote of the full county board before we list it.
okay.
Right now it's, this is again, big enough that you should start at least considering what you want to do now.
Bill,
I guess, as long as you got time, I would like to see, you contact a couple realtors here in Ashland and see what their estimate would be, and just, hey, point that problem out. We got a problem with the wall shifting. And, so that we have a handle on it, because when we come to another meeting, we're going to say, well, what do you think it's worth? But at least, I would contact 2, 3 realtors in Ashland and kind of get an estimate. And, you're not committing anything, and I'm sure they want to sell it. They'll give you an estimate.
Well, I'm sure they want to sell it if they can. I mean, commissions are commissions.
Well, but the thing is, like, say, for instance, as we're discussing right now, it's estimated at $500,000 to bring that building back into some kind of operational specification. Is that $500,000 going to be a permanent fix or only a temporary fix for the next 5, 10 years? And it's, you're going to have the same issue problems again.
Well, it's a permanent fix for that part of the building. That doesn't mean it's an old building. I mean, it's from the 1800s,
Something
1900s. I mean, it's going to have other problems. To be honest, I mean, old buildings break down.
Yeah.
And so there will be further expenses down the road. And I get it. If anybody wants to see it, you can come down into the basement and you can see what the old structure looks like. There's actually a giant hole in the wall facing the street that's as big as this wall right here almost. You can look down and then about 15 feet below is the old city street. And so you can see where the main street has been lifted 15 to 20 feet from the 1800s. So it's, if anything, it's worth seeing it just for that.
I need to see that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay, so I just got one thing here. But I'll pull it up in the packet. So the USDA, and this has happened really, really fast, like in the last week and a half, and it needs to be submitted on Monday. So the USDA has created this Rural Partners Network, and what it is there's information in your packet. They've picked 6 pilot areas or potential pilot areas in the state of Wisconsin to run it. Ashland County is one of them. Iron County is another. Eau Claire is another, and I forget what the other 3 are. And what this does is it makes they're going to hire 2 employees, the USDA, to work specifically on the areas that are chosen by them. What it's going to do is it's going to make all the federal agencies who work on development, so there's about 20 of them, more available to these communities and streamline the process for applying for grants and loans and stuff and federal assistance. So we've been working with Northwest Regional Planning, who's going to take the lead on the project, and and then some people in the Glidden area who have been working separately with USDA about economic development. Carver at the Economic Development Corporation. So right now, the plan is that we would form a group with Ashland County, Iron County, and Price County. And that would be, and then the partnerships would be, Northern College, all the economic development corporations. I mean, all the chambers, everybody who's involved in development, the hospitals, local business groups, everybody who has a stake in seeing development happen. So that's where the plan is right now. Now, there is still talk about expanding it, and that could happen tomorrow or even later today. I did speak to the county administrator in Burnett County called me yesterday saying that they feel like they're a better fit with an Ashland group than with Eau Claire, because we're both more rural and have similar economies and similar peoples. So we are meeting today. I am meeting later today with several other county administrators, and we may expand the partnership to include some more northern counties. The goal here is, I think USDA is going to, when they decide who to award for, I personally feel that they're going to pick a bigger, more diverse group that could have a bigger impact than a small group of less than 40,000 people. I mean, let's be honest. Ashland, Iron, and Price counties are not very big. So the impact wouldn't be as big. And that would make a group like Eau Claire, which is huge and has surrounding counties. They have literally like 37 partners in Eau Claire. And so they'd have hundreds of thousands of people in their group. So there is talk now about expanding it to a bunch of northern other counties as partnerships. So I don't know how much to tell you because this thing keeps changing real quick, but we have to turn our application in on Monday. Yeah.
Is there going to be a cost to Ashland County to do this?
No, just some staff time.
Staff time of Ashland counties?
Yeah, like me,
Okay,
being in meetings.
So
There's only upside for us.
okay. So are you in favor of doing this then?
I'm in favor of doing this, and I'm in favor of expanding the footprint and taking on more partners. I think that having a bigger partnership is going to work better for all of us. And I think it's going to be more likely that Ashland County is chosen to do this project, to do this pilot study.
Ashland County used to have a rural development office, the USDA.
Yeah, they consolidate everything in Stevens Point.
Right. So, I mean, USDA managed this office in the building in Sanborn that I'm in. And this department went away probably 15 years ago. And it was in the same building as our Natural Resource Conservation Service, that's USDA, Farm Service Agency, and Rural Development was all together. So I don't know if it would be worthwhile talking to the USDA office over here by Super One.
No, we're actually dealing with Stevens Point.
Okay.
And Stevens Point is actually hiring 2 people.
And then how much is the grant?
Well, it's not really a grant. It's more they're providing manpower and abilities, connections to get into other areas of the government. So if you had I'll use the town of Jacobs. So say they have a business there that wants to expand. They would get priority access to the SBA for loans. or they would get priority access to even the USDA for rural development loans. The local communities would have greater access to the USDA and priority for loans. Or so, one of our, say, the state of Ashland, they need to upgrade their wastewater facility. They would have priority access to USDA for a rural loan, community rural loan to upgrade the wastewater facility or to redo the mortgage so you can do an upgrade. So this provides faster service and direct access to the federal government and gives you more points when applying for grants. So it's, I'll be honest, they've been very, very late on details. What you see here right now is basically what I know. Yep, that's it.
So do we need a motion to?
No, it's information.
Just information?
Yeah, one of the things is, I was talking to Supervisor Berlin about this yesterday. Part of transparency is telling you about these things when they happen. So you don't always have to take action on an agenda item. Sometimes it's just so you know what's going on and you aren't coming to me today saying, what the heck's going on? Now you. Well, I think we did that already, September 22nd.
Motion to adjourn.
Before you guys